What's up, everybody? It's Practical AI, episode 16. We're glad you joined us. We've got quite an interesting show today. Our intrepid producer, Olga, has uncovered an interesting new wrinkle in the AI arms race, and it involves Chinese AIs and the intersection of Chinese AIs with US and EU-based AI startups that are trying to achieve profitability. Olga, what do you have for us?
Okay, first of all, hi everybody. Welcome to Practical AI. We've got quite a show for you today. We're scanning the AI news trends, latest playbooks, latest anything you can possibly imagine in the AI world every week, and then we bring you what's real, what's not, so you can keep up in this fast-moving world and be ready to build with what you know about AI and use all this information for your benefit. So with all of that, I'll kick off with this really interesting quote I heard this weekend. I was driving and listening to All In podcast, and it kind of stopped me in my tracks. And so this whole quote sent me on this little rabbit chase afterwards. And basically what the quote said was this. It was Brad Gerstner was on the All In podcast, episode 374, if you guys want to check it out. And he said, I don't know if you guys saw, but Cursor 2.0 launched this week. My team at 8090 use it. It's an incredible product. Guess what they did? They swapped out Anthropic for an open source Chinese model. Yep. Do you know what they're using? It's like Kimi, or what is it? Chamath said, I think it's Qwen. I think they're using a spin of Qwen. And then Brad said, yeah, to be clear, they're cleansing these Chinese open source models, but they are, I don't know about Cursor, but there are a lot of companies, and then running them, setting them up themselves. I was like, what just happened? Cursor abandoned Anthropic to use an open source Chinese model? What? Anyway, what do you think about that?
Well, here's what is interesting to me. These Chinese models are open source in the sense that you can take the models and run them on your own GPUs. This is a really critical distinction happening right now, because controlling costs, like if you're only outsourcing to OpenAI or to Claude, you don't have good control of your costs. You're basically at the mercy of whatever they decide. And, compute's always changing. All these factors are always changing. It's an uneven landscape, and it keeps shifting. It's hard to run a business on that. But if you have one of these open source AIs that you can run on your own hardware, you can control costs a little more tightly. And for these companies, like these SaaS companies with these crazy burn rates, it's absolutely critical because they're spending too much money per customer. So Cursor didn't really have a choice. They had to do something to lower their costs. They turned to this Chinese open source model that they can run on their own. And the distinction is that you can't do that with what OpenAI offers, with what Claude offers, with like these American AIs, Gemini, you name it. You can't really do that. And there isn't a big player, at least in the American and EU markets, that is an open source model. The Chinese ones are dominating. And so, of course, they turn to the Chinese model. Now we got all these geopolitical concerns about using Chinese models, and we're going to look at all that stuff. But here's the deal. So let's go back to what Brad said. He said they are cleansing the Chinese open source models. And it's funny that he felt like he needed to say that right away, because I think the first knee-jerk reaction a lot of people have is, well, are these models secure? Is there stuff in there that we don't want in there?
That's what I would think.
Well, so cleansing in AI means they filter training data to remove copyrighted, unsafe, or low quality material. Now, copyrighted stuff is pretty cut and dry. Stuff that's copyrighted, you can say, okay, this is not. That's black and white. But unsafe or low quality material are both, those are subjective measures.
Right.
They are not objective.
Well, listen, so cleansing isn't, have you heard of cleansing ever? I haven't.
I've only seen it come up in context not like this. This is much bigger. This is the first big case of this.
So I would think like, okay, open open source models, I would say, scrappy startups want to do this or something like that. But when I heard Cursor, I was like, wait, Cursor, isn't that $1 billion company that is VC funded and they are jumping ship to Chinese models? So let's
Well, hold on. I
dive
want to go
into
through
that.
the other parts of cleansing because it's
Okay,
fascinating.
go.
So they also remove outputs the model shouldn't generate. Again, subjective. This includes banned topics, things deemed misinformation. You can put as much reliance on that as you want, and also unsafe instructions. So instructions to do things we shouldn't be doing, like making pipe bombs or something like this. Stripping embedded biases or problematic behaviors. Again, subjective. Think about it. And then sanitizing system prompts or pre-training stuff so the model is safer and more compliant. According to whom?
I know, right? Who is that? I
So
mean,
why is this phrasing being used? Why the cleansing? Why all this? These Chinese open source models ship with large unfiltered data sets. Ooh, scary. And looser guardrails and different safety standards. So basically, there's nothing in place. They just say, here's what the model is spitting out. You do with it what you want. To me, that actually seems like the way this should be. The end
right.
user can determine what they want to cleanse and the amount of cleansing, but it's not that easy. It's not that easy. The US and the EU both have safety and compliance guidelines that they're going to hold these large models to, or these large players to. I think if you're a small guy, you can kind of fly under the radar. But these regulatory compliance concerns, I'm concerned about these regulatory compliance concerns. I think
Right.
it's a big problem for these US and EU based companies for competition.
Well, so can I go to my my
Yeah. So we're going to look at Cursor so we can kind of reveal like what's really going on here. What are these companies dealing with? Why are they turning to Chinese models? What's the economics that's driving this? This is really great. So Olga Stein here.
Guess what's driving it? Money. So what a shocker. Anyway, can you pull up our first slide, please?
Let's get our slide
So
on the board.
coincidentally, I was going to research, every week, one of the things that we talk about here is we kind of go behind the scene of how AI companies that are in the AI economy, how do they make money? So far we've covered Canva and we've covered Opus Clip. We kind of talked about how they make money. So that way you guys can learn when you're building your AI company, or if you're selling to an AI company, you understand how they make money because it's a little bit different than any other company before that. And this is what we're going to learn. So this week I picked, Cursor completely independent first before I, obviously like connected the quote and all that stuff. And so Cursor, it's actually really fascinating how they make money. So,
Or do they make money?
Well,
do
very funny. So Cursor went from 0 to over $1 billion in about 2 years. It's the fastest SaaS growth in history. They beat Zoom and they beat Slack. That's how fast they grew. And the reason I pull up this this slide over here is so you can see like what I'm using here. It's the actual AI apps, 50 AI apps that startups spend money on, and that's from a couple of weeks that we've talked about it. So you know who the players are, and you see how many of them you're actually using if you want to play that game. But anyway, back to Cursor. So they grew super fast, and then but when you actually look at the actual numbers, revenue versus costs, you see that the fundamental problem that's facing almost every AI company, they're making $1 billion, but they're losing money on every single customer. And that was until the summer pricing fix shifted the pain to users. So
well, let's get some backstory here real quick. So these companies that do what Cursor does, you use an AI prompt and it generates, they're like a coding AI. So it generates code for you. You can manage your projects and do all this stuff. And it's got AI prompts embedded in there. What they're actually, we call them wrappers for AIs. They might be calling out to OpenAI. They might be calling out to Claude. So Claude and OpenAI are really doing the compute. And Cursor just serving as a wrapper and giving you something you can use with those outputs. We call these AI wrappers. The problem, all these companies that are wrappers that are experiencing rapid growth, they're struggling to become cash flow positive. So that's what the problem we are exploring now.
Yeah, it's interesting. Keith, thanks for bringing that up. They did make this change with the layout, so I'm not sure what you guys are seeing on YouTube, because it is kind of annoying. I don't know what's going on, but
Is this better?
I don't know.
I,
You
I
do, you
just
do.
I hid the preview of the vertical broadcast, which is for mobile devices.
Okay. Well, I don't know. Let's see. So basically by May 2025, Cursor hit 500 million ARR, and by November 2025, they hit $1 billion in ARR. So that's 83 million per month. So we're not talking about the actual, look at the last 12 months and they made $1 billion. No, they just hit 83 million per month. So that means their ARR is 1 billion. Again, fastest growing company. They've got 1 million total users. 360,000 of them are paying, so it's 36% conversion rate, which is very high, by the way. They have 50,000 businesses and over half the Fortune 500, and that is an important point for what I want to make later in the point. They're working with over half the Fortune 500 companies. Okay, that's a lot of American companies. Just FYI. That our S&P and everything kind of rides on, right? So the pricing is $20 a month for Pro. That's 80% of the revenue. $40 business team for organizations with centralized billing, and $200 enterprise. That's 20% of the revenue. And that's custom for heavy teams. So that's kind of the simple pricing for them. They have zero marketing spend. It's all word of mouth. They scaled from 12 employees to 300. Super impressive. And their revenue per employee is like 3.3 million. That's kind of super incredibly high and impressive. So that's the revenue, where the money is coming from. Again, this is how the top of the funnel works. But now let's see the costs, all right? And this is where it actually burns. So first we're going to look at Cursor pre-June of 2025, all right? So remember, they hit half a billion ARR in May. So I'm assuming that's when they started the what do you say in America? The shed hit the fan or something. When they're like, oh crap, we actually need to we actually need to look at how we make money over here. So before the summer change, they had unlimited, which is funny when you think about AI use and unlimited. They don't really go together very well. So unlimited across tiers meant Cursor paid for everything, flat fees, no caps. Pro account was $20 a month, business $40 a month. We're going to talk about that. And their power users, which was about 10 to 15% of the base, they ran agents, refactors, long context queries, and they burned $200 to $400 a month each in API fees to Anthropic and OpenAI. Do you want to go to the next slide so we can see the comparison? So we're talking about the before the summer, their their costs before they changed it. So they were losing money super fast because they ate it all, they subsidized it all. There was no overage charge. I mean, I guess it was the good old times for everybody who was using AI back in the day. So they lost $180 to $380 per heavy user seat. And so they were bleeding money like crazy. So that's why, when we look at their expenses, they, on the average, they say they spend about 600 million on all AI, like Anthropic, OpenAI, Gemini, X. That's kind of their spend. But when you look at the overages, that's when it starts kicking in to over like $1 billion in the actual spend. So that's the real AI vendor bill. And it's kind of like going to the doctor in America. You never know how much they're going to charge you. So it's kind of like this with AI. You never know how much the bill is going to be. But before June of 2025, it was Cursor who ate up all of those extra expenses.
And that's the big challenge facing a lot of these wrapper companies. You want to have some sort of cost that the customer can stomach. You don't want to tell them, hey, well, we'll send you a bill. We don't know what it's going to be. So you have to offer some level of pricing, but then your vendor costs may change during the period where you've captured X dollars, but now it's costing you Y dollars. And that is very difficult to navigate. There's going to be periods where you lose massively, and then you have to shift your costs, and customers don't like that. Like, this is a tough game to be playing.
So that's what they did. So after June, once they figured out, oh my God, we cannot be, we cannot be doing all of this for long term. So they created credit pools. They replaced unlimited across tiers. So they now put some limits in place. It was $20. So basically, they started putting, extra charges where you now were responsible for any overages.
Here's exactly how it worked. Before, they weren't tracking individual users' token usage because that's a pain in the ass. It requires a lot of technical stuff on their end and a lot of infrastructure to put in place to be able to do that effectively. So they just said, nah, we're going to focus on our core product delivery and acquire customers. Well, the credit pools is them actually doing all this hard technical work on the back end to track token usage on a per user basis so they don't get burned. That's what the credit pools are.
Gotcha. So, and then once you kind of hit the overages, you pay overages at raw vendor rates. So they sort of just like pass through the rate, so that way at least they're not burning, they're not making money on that, but they're also not like losing money on that. And then that's kind of what they did. And so you could also switch to auto mode, which was cheaper and unlimited, but really a lot slower. And so what happened is that power users now pay $60 to $150 a month. But again, it's become very, very unpredictable. But Cursor breaks even or profits on heavy usage, and they no longer lose $380 a month on those overages.
But customer spend went up an average of 3 to 7x.
Right. Yeah.
That's a big pill to swallow.
So the real AI vendor bill dropped from 800 million to like $1 billion, still high, but at least now they are not like bleeding, super heavy, and it's no longer catastrophic. But it created unpredictability for users, and Bill spoke with spiked with tasks. Cloud agents, $4 to $10 a query, and of course, a lot of customers became very, very, very unhappy with all of that.
Now their gross margin's only negative 10 to 20%.
Right. So they went from negative 30 to 60 to negative 10 to 20, which is, an improvement, but they're still not, they're spending, basically they're passing almost all of their money back to AI companies. AI companies take a lot. And then there's another winner here that keeps being a winner in every single cost that we've looked at so far is AWS. They are the servers that get paid no matter what. They don't care who is spending what. They just collecting their $100 million in server. And I think that's another thing that went super high in the summer is their server costs went from like a couple million to like 15 million a month. So that's another thing. They had to pay servers no matter what. And so all of that was completely not sustainable for them, right? So they fixed that problem. The customer got the unpredictable bill. And so I think what that means, like if you're building a product right now with AI, there's a lot of unpredictability for you as a builder. And then for your customer, and customers did not like some customers were reporting they would get extra $100 billed just for one day, and extra, fees. I mean, they would spike $100 to $300. So it's like it's like market rates, right? Like you never knew what you're going to get and how much you're going to get billed, which is obviously not a greatest way to build customer loyalty and happiness.
Now, I will give a little warning shot here. I've seen a few, not a ton, but a few small companies. I've seen a few in WordPress doing essentially AI wrapper stuff where the AI inside the software generates some output for you, some outcome. And they are doing the token-based pricing. So they built their little token system to do it. But man, they are playing a risky game. I do not think now is the time to do that. I do not think it's a smart play right now. We are seeing that without the injection of VC money and the ability to absorb some losses as you ramp up, that you can't win this game. There is no long-term play for now. That may change. Compute costs may come down enough that there is a long-term play. It can stabilize. I don't know. But we're going to look at some of the infrastructure behind this later in the show. It's not a good bet right now. I would be hesitant to use software that is priced that way. I think your best bet for any AI service that you use is pay as you go. And you can at least work with that for now, but things are changing rapidly. And any company that's trying to launch this thing and manage tokens for now, that's just a wrapper,
Yeah.
not good.
So the good news, they've improved after June. They went from for every $1 of revenue, they went from spending $1.50 and $3 to now they're spending $1 to $1.30. So basically, whatever they collect, they have to give away. So they're not losing crazily, but they're still like not making any money, which I don't think VCs are happy with that. And they're not alone. OpenAI lost $5 billion last year. Perplexity, all of them, Anthropic, Claude, all of them are losing money, right? But we're going to get to them later in some other show. So Cursor's three big bets. The compute costs, what can they do, right? So they can collapse their compute costs. They can build their own model, or they can just keep charging more money for enterprise. And I think when they changed that in June, they thought maybe they figured this out. But as of last week, when I heard that on an All In podcast, what they've done, clearly they were not happy with the result and they wanted more. So that's when they went ahead and started exploring Chinese friends and what they can do with that. So the reason, so now that you know what changes they went through this year, right? The version 1, what is not long-term in AI world and AI pricing is unlimited. AI is not unlimited. You still have to pay server costs. You still have to pay AI costs, all of that stuff. Then they went to the token, whatever, complicated thing, super complicated for everybody. No one likes it. And now they are changing vendors, right? So they went from using Claude as their main provider. And by the way, Cursor is Anthropic's biggest client or customer. So now they are substituting Claude for, oh my gosh, I'm blanking out.
Quinn, the spin of Quinn.
For Qwen, right? For the Chinese open source.
But I think they're calling that Composer.
No, Composer is their own version. It has nothing to do with that.
Okay.
Qwen. Well, maybe. Actually,
I think that's what they're doing. They just called it.
Maybe that's what they're calling it, but they're just scraping Chinese open source version. All I'm saying is that the money will trickle away from Anthropic to now either to their Composer, but now it's really going to Qwen. And what that means, I don't know if I put that slide on what that looks like on the cost. No, I did not. But we will talk about that in a second. So anything you have to say before I kind of move on from that's not it yet.
Yeah. I mean, this is the landscape to watch.
Go back.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
this is great. Perfect.
So this is the landscape to watch. These companies they're going to have to shift. And so as they grow and as power users get more accustomed to using these platforms, it's not a stable, static situation. Developers, especially who use these products, they're building larger things. They're building on a larger code base over time. That means the context they're providing for each query is increasing over time. That means the storage required to handle that customer over time is also going to increase. These are tough things to model and plan for. That's why their AWS thing kind of took off, not exponentially, but at a rate that was accelerating. It's really hard to deal with stuff that accelerates out of control.
Yeah.
So this is just a very difficult thing to get right, especially when you've already hit the scale that they've hit. Like their problems are huge right away.
So here's how it compares. So here's how Qwen compares to Cursor. For a typical Cursor session, for 50,000 input, 20,000 output tokens, Qwen costs 0.018 versus Claude 0.5. That's a 28x reduction. Okay, did you hear that? That's 28 times that they spent by going to Qwen from
Yeah. So it's like 1.8 cents for every 50 cents or something.
It's 28. So basically it's like for 0.018 to 0.5. I mean, that's 28 times.
Yeah,
reduction.
That's 2 pennies versus 50.
I mean, that's a lot. So they switched their defaults Power users, 10 to 15% of base, previously burned 200 to 400 a month on Claude, but now they burn 20 to 50 on Quen. Obviously, like, no one knows exactly. We're just gonna speculating here as well. But they're gonna enjoy their margins a lot more. So Quen will be for scale, best for high volume, cost sensitive apps, excels at coding and math. And Claude is for precision, premium for nuance, reasoning agents, worth the markup for low volume, high stakes tasks. And so that's kind of where it's going. And that's how the price compares. So now you know, for every cent you spend on Claude, no, every cent you spend on Quen, you would spend 28 cents on Claude, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of
I
how it
think the
is.
audience should know that something like coding is not some magic black box. Getting an AI to code is really a simple task. It's not super complicated. You don't need some crazy model to do it. What you do need is really good instructions written in Markdown to feed to that AI to give it context. I am quite confident I could take any random Chinese model, feed it the right Markdown documents, and get excellent code for any project that I would actually want to undertake in the real world. It's just not that crazy of a thing. So I just want to dispel everybody of the notion that we need some crazy advanced AI model to do this. And I think we're starting to get a better idea also of when you actually need to deploy real reasoning. Like, as we use these models more, we're going to get a good sense of, oh, this is more procedural. Oh, this is high level reasoning. And we're really going to have a clear separation between those two things. Right now, it's still very nebulous. I don't think people get it at all. But that is starting to emerge. And the coding thing is just really overblown. It's not that hard.
Well, I mean, I think the Chinese open source models have PR, issue, right? Like I was kind of naively thinking, like, oh, big companies would not use Chinese, open source models because of whatever. It could be this, it could be that, all those things. And then I hear that cursor totally shifted and switched, and I was like, wait, what? How is that possible? So that's when I found out where all of those open source models kind of live. So if you want to go to the Hugging Face thing right quick. So have you heard of Hugging Face before?
We brought it up in a previous show, but only briefly.
Yeah, keep going to the happy face before that. Yeah. So basically Hugging Face is a GitHub for AI models. So look at the 2023, what models were on there, mostly American companies, to now July 2025, it's switched to now it's all mostly Chinese companies. So like OpenAI used to be there, I guess. Google used to be there, Microsoft, even Claude, like they're all kind of there. And now this is where you go to get your open source model that's most likely going to be Chinese.
So what's happening on Hugging Face is I think they have 500,000 real world developers and people interfacing with AI using these models, providing feedback on benchmarks, performance, and outcomes, and they kind of get a rating based on that. So this is people's experience with these things, and maybe it's getting gamed by Chinese operators running a phone farm. I don't know. You can take that for what it's worth, but they do have some simple benchmarks, like you can repeat some of these tests, and the numbers are what they are, the results are what they are, and it doesn't actually surprise me very much, because here's the deal. OpenAI, Claude, these models that exist in the West, they put a ton of energy. They have a ton of engineers and just focus dedicated to compliance on these models. The Chinese ones don't do that at all. They are focused on raw performance and output. They're chewing through as much data as they can, and they're providing raw outputs. So they are you can go faster that way because you're not hitting the brakes with these regulatory checks. So you can develop more quickly, you can iterate more quickly, you can do everything more quickly, and you don't have these concerns. People don't really have a good grasp of this. Security, stuff like this, security comes at the cost of time and energy and compute. Like, two-factor authentication takes a lot longer than just typing your damn password and hitting enter. Like, you can just think about this. Well, this is now that same scenario at a huge scale. And we've run the experiment now for 3-4 years in America with the brakes on, the regulatory brakes on. And the Chinese stuff has been running the same amount of time with no brakes. And eventually you go faster and you get farther ahead. Like, people are going to have to accept this at some point or make some changes so that the American models or, the Western models can compete, or else I don't think they're going to have much future.
Well, and it's interesting. So one of the American darlings, one of the fastest growing company, I guess, Cursor, just changed their provider just like that, and it's like it was not on my bingo list at all.
I mean,
Right?
1.8 cents versus 50 cents is not the same game.
Well, I
They're
mean,
not playing the same game.
I just think that's like, okay, then if that's going to be the trend now, remember, half of the Fortune 500 companies are Cursor's customers. What I would want to know now is that, are they going to have customers leaving them because they're going to have some worries about them using the Chinese company, like for their code? Would they care? Would they not care? I want to know about what that's going to happen. What is it going to do to the customers, because they are sort of playing with that, and I don't know if they're playing with fire or this is actually going to be a really good bet for them. But I wanted to bring out the Hugging Face to see where the developers go to find the best open source, I guess, models, when they go and download them and play with them. I mean, you'll know more about what coders, how that works in real life, but you can you just can go there, see what's performing. There's over, there's 500,000 models hosted. Anyone can upload their model weights, include benchmarks, leaderboards, community testing. Developers download models to run locally or integrate into apps. So I guess that's where the open models live, huh?
I mean, yeah. So we can say that this data seems trustworthy because it's independently verifiable by the users of Hugging Face. It shows developer preference because this is stuff people are actually using and testing, putting through real world, tests. And it shows that the shift is if not completely real, there's something to it. There's something to this shift towards the Chinese models. And I believe absolutely it has to do with the fact that the American and EU models have brakes applied to them and the Chinese models do not have brakes.
Well, so all of that talk about Chinese AI and all of that stuff made me want to, like, obviously ask the question, what you can go to the next slide. What does their landscape look like? We know what American, not this one.
It's out of order.
Yeah. So what does their world look like? We know our world, right? We obviously have OpenAI, we have Anthropic, we have Gemini with Google, we have OpenAI, XAI, we have all these models. So what does it look like in China, and like in simple words, right? And it's very interesting. Like, it's pretty complicated. So China has built 10 to 12 companies that look exactly like OpenAI, Anthropic, and the major US players. But do you know anything about them? I mean, I don't really. Do you?
I've heard the names and that's it.
So there's an entire parallel AI industry over there, and the numbers are kind of staggering. So I think you want to do this part.
All right. Let's see. I was just admiring the graphic there. But yeah. So the 50,000 foot overview here is that China has what they call the six tigers: Zhipu AI, which is valued at 5 billion, Moonshot 3.3 billion, Minimax, Baishuan, 01.ai, and StepFun. All these were founded after 2019. They're all unicorns, and they're all shipping frontier models. And then you add on the Chinese tech giants. You've got Alibaba with Quinn. Baidu has a model called Ernie. ByteDance has Daobao. And Tencent has Hunyuan. So they've got, a lot of big models servicing the different segments of the market that seem to be emerging. Anthropic sort of is the code and reasoning focused AI here in America. OpenAI is kind of, I think of it as more like writing text, longer context. You feed it a bunch of information, it chews through that for you. Alibaba Quinn is Alibaba is sort of Google in China. Meta, they're comparing, Llama from Meta to DeepSeek. DeepSeek made waves. I want to say it was like 8 months ago.
Yeah.
That made a huge splash on social media for like a week.
Yep.
And then totally went away because I think Claude came out with an updated model that they said was smashing it. And then like nobody ever talked about it again. But the difference is that DeepSeek is fully open source. It is a small model. And if you like had your own GPU, you could run this. I mentioned last week how PewDiePie, famous YouTuber, is running his own model. He like bought his own GPU rig and setting up his own reasoning model. I would love to know what he's using. Like if it's one of these models or if it's one of the American or EU-based open source models. I wouldn't be surprised if it was DeepSeek.
Yeah. Well, so at this point, like, like if this was me like 2 weeks ago, I would be like, oh, Chinese, AI models boring or whatever. Let's talk about American. But now that I'm seeing like these trends of like big companies moving to Chinese companies, I'm like, maybe let's look more into kind of what that looks like. And I like these comparisons, right? So obviously they have big players like Alibaba, and then this Moonshot AI. Actually, Kimi K2 made a very big splash this week. They it beat GPT-5 on key benchmarks, and it's fully open sourced. And so that's kind of how the news kind of came this way too. So like, there's all these different things that the Chinese are I guess improving on, or
the signal so Kimi K2 open source, it beat GPT-5. What does it actually mean in the real world? It is signaling to companies like Cursor that have deep pockets that, hey, you can run your models internally because you can run this open source model. You're responsible for your own compute, but you can run this and actually get control over that spiraling AI cost structure. That's the signal. We don't really have a competing signal from US or EU based companies right now. So like things are going to continue to move in this direction for the big players who need to scale until something changes. So when you see that, you see like a model's open source or whatever, that doesn't really mean like, openness or freedom necessarily. It's a signal to big players that they can run this themselves and control costs.
So they're cheaper, they are they're I guess faster, and their training is less expensive.
If it's cheaper and faster, that means you can run this on you can actually run the compute yourself.
Right. So this is what I don't understand, and this is why I need your brain for. So right now, OpenAI, for example, they have their servers that they're using somewhere in America, right, to run our queries when we run them. So how would that work for Quinn? So like when Claude, when Cursor is running the queries, where is that query going to? Like,
well, I don't know how they've got their stuff set up. If they're running it just through Quinn, they're running it through data servers in China or data centers.
Okay.
They've got like a big grid of GPUs over there in some warehouse, and the queries are running through that. If they're running their own model, they are probably leasing a set of GPUs from one of these big American data centers. They could be subleasing from freaking XAI in Memphis. I don't know. I don't know if X even does that.
Well, but
so they would get like 8 of these things and run their queries through there.
So what
but they're paying a lease?
So how are they? So how are they cheaper then? Like, what makes them cheaper than, let's say, OpenAI? Like, what makes Kimi K2 cheaper?
Well, just for one, the production of the model, they mentioned that like DeepSeek was trained in $4.6 million.
Right.
Like OpenAI was hundreds of millions. Part of the reason for that is it was estimated on here. We had a little thing that suggested that 10 to 20% of the input costs is on regulatory compliance. I think it's probably higher than that because you got humans on this, so you got human costs that you don't have, and you have the actual like dealing with compute.
But how does the open source AI really works though? Like, I mean, do you download the model somewhere into your
so
thing?
you like, let's just say I went out and bought a GPU and set up a server here in the house.
Okay.
I would download that model and put it on there, and I'm running it locally. It doesn't call out to China. It just calls to this server only. Well, now I've got total control over my entire cost structure.
Okay, gotcha. So
and I just have to scale based on like, oh, here's how much compute I need.
So when you are, so this is decentralized model then. So everybody
Yes.
owns their own product.
It's much more decentralized than an OpenAI.
Gotcha. Well, listen, this is fascinating thing to kind of to watch. I mean, do you have any other kind of takeaways? What will
I
happen
mean,
to the economics of AI now that we have Chinese players openly being used by some of the biggest companies, AI companies in the country? And what would that do to American companies?
I think we've got, I might be getting ahead of myself on the show here, but I think it's a point worth making. Companies are addicted to speed. In business, speed matters a lot. How quickly can we get this to market? How quickly can we run the numbers up? I've seen this escalate a lot in just over the last 25 years, just in my business life. Like it was important before. It's just gotten more important every year. Companies are addicted to speed. But we also are sort of addicted to regulation now too, like nanny state activities. Like, this would be nice, but this thing's spitting out some nasty things. We can't have that. We've got to do something about this. That stuff competes directly with speed. If you want speed, you can't really have all this regulatory crap that's in the way, because that's brakes on the car. You want the car to go faster, you can't put brakes on the car. That doesn't make sense. So we've got a tug of war right now between the need for speed and this desire to nanny state control outputs.
Yeah.
And for AI to fully blossom, we have to accept, I think we have to accept everything that comes out of it and become smart users. Like, we want to use this, we don't want to use that. But I don't want these models spending a bunch of time and energy restraining outputs. So anytime you restrain an output, like the output would be this, but you're stepping in saying, oh no, scrub that out of the way. That's called an exception. Exceptions are never perfect. You never accept something in exactly the right cases. There's going to be times when some information shouldn't have gotten through and it did not. So that's a lose in that case. Like the data, the output could have been better. It wasn't, because this exception was placed in the way. Exceptions are a game you can never win. You create exceptions, and then it's like whack-a-mole. You smash one mole, two more pop up farther away that you didn't anticipate.
Yes.
And so it's a stupid game to play. China's just not playing this game.
Yep.
And so, to me, this feels like a dash towards infinity. And if we are dashing towards infinity, we have got to stop putting brakes on the car. This nanny state stuff has gone on long enough. Humans need to be able to say, I choose to use this. I want to discard that. The models can't be doing that. The tech companies involved can't be putting energy and expenditure into that. They're making decisions before the market has had a chance to make a decision. The market is a more efficient decision maker than any intermediary between data and output. And, we have to start accepting that. We have to move towards that. And I don't see any real movement in that direction. Certainly not yet. Maybe we'll figure it out. Maybe we won't. If we don't, Chinese models are going to win for a while. I don't think it means they have to win forever. If they win this part of the race and they're the dominant player for the next 10 years, that means the future is all like that. I don't think it means that. But I do think that what I'm describing, we are going to have to correct course and stop this nanny state interference. Like, we've got to stop.
Well, this is we're learning what AI actually is, and that you can't put that genie in the bottle anymore. So, and
reality's messy. Can we not deal with this? Are we not adults?
Right. And do you remember that U.S. Export controls the chips that were supposed to slow China down? Remember the whole chip thing? Well, instead, they actually forced incredible innovation and efficiency, which is what's called the mixture of expert, MOE. I had to look that up. Architectures and workarounds. So we literally created our own competition by trying to suppress it.
Most predictable outcome ever. The outcome really
exactly what you talked about. It's the exception kind of thing. And now look at this, what we're doing. So anyway, so the big takeaway: understand how Cursor's business model has evolved just this year. They already went through 1, 2, 3. They're on the third model. We'll see what happens. We're going to follow them. Maybe next time I'm going to do a deep dive on how Qwen makes money, so we can understand the economy, AI economics behind that. But that was, to me, understanding the Chinese models and open source models and how this all works, and how American companies now going to use Chinese something again. So we keep going back using American, and then we're like, oh, it's too expensive, we're going to use Chinese. So like that's tale as old as times, I guess.
Another point worth making, like there's this concern, like, oh, will people turn away if they find out, Cursor's using a Chinese model? Well, the reality is you can't have these unicorns popping up. Unicorns don't pop up faster than these model switches happen. Cursor will change their model. People still want to use what Cursor provides. They're not going to leave because of this. There's not going to be enough alternatives popping up quickly enough to do that. Like the shift to Chinese AI, it doesn't matter how you feel about it. It's going to happen on a lot of these companies.
Yeah, I mean,
people are going to continue to use
Cursor is a great product. They've got really good feedback. So we'll see what happens. Maybe Fortune 500 companies will be like, no, we're not using this. We don't know.
Yep.
All right, moving on.
Let's go to the study. Let's go to the study.
Let's move to the next segment. I have it's a big survey. It's a huge survey that's been kind of traveling the web this week. It's a McKinsey research that they've done. I know a couple of weeks ago, we've done an MIT report where we talked about how 95% of AI pilots fail because generic tools don't adapt to workflows. So McKinsey dropped 30 pages report on November 5. Recommend you guys go check it out. I'm not going to go through the whole report. I just want to go through a couple numbers that really caught my attention. So they really focus on the companies that got past the pilots. So, and then they looked at what separates the ones who scale from the ones who stay stuck. They surveyed around 2,000 companies. And what they found out is 88% are using AI. Only 37% are scaling it, and only 7% have fully scaled it. So the numbers we're going to talk about today is 8, 2.8, and 62. So what does this really mean? And I'm not sure where Chris went, but I'll go with it. My official slider, let's go to the segment 1, the 8% reality. So this is from the McKinsey report, and I thought that was interesting to kind of talk about it. So everybody moved past chatbots to agents now. The agentic era is here. Everybody talks about that. Every company has an agent product, agent. I'm sick and tired of hearing that. So McKinsey asked, how many have actually scaled agents? And
do you know what that means, the scaling there?
Yeah, like agentic, we're using agents for this, we're using agents for that. But actually, like what that means in the real world, like how many things have been completely, taken over by agents in those companies is truly little. Like, look at that. Look at the data that in any function, like IT is leading right now, right? With some scale, like some of the functions are being scaled with agents, but majority of the world, no, they're not even planning to use this year, not at all.
It's looking like single digits to low double digits.
I mean, the most impressive is the IT, then it's knowledge, then it's sales.
Knowledge management should be almost 100%.
Right. And so it goes back to those
full
tasks.
capture possible.
So like all this hype about agentic era, and like you would think every company now has become fully agentic, but it's a bunch of, bunch of crap, really. So this is what it really tells you, that 8%, that's the highest number, and that's an IT department that they scaled. Look at manufacturing, look at supply chain, look at human resources. I mean, we are not even close to any kind of scaling of agentic world at all. So let's go to exhibit 2. Actually, hold on. So IT service desks, let's stay on the first one. Yeah. So no function is above 10% yet. So IT service desks, thousands of similar tickets. That's why they are scaling so fast, right? So 8% scaled. Knowledge management, repeated research, they scaled 7%. But manufacturing, every situation is different. So the more difference, I guess, the more agentic does not really work there yet. So MIT told us generic tools fail because they don't learn, but agents were supposed to fix that, and they do, but only in narrow contexts. So like with support tickets or whatever.
Right. So this goes back to a point we've been making for weeks, and that AI is really good for procedural tasks. You know that like you go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3. There might be some deviation in the substance, but we're moving along these lines. It's very clearly defined how this is supposed to work. The problem is there's a nuance to roles in existing companies, and the nuance involves learning and adapting, doing something a little differently, if this, then this kind of thing. AI not really good at that in an autonomous way.
Right.
AI does not handle those shifts autonomously yet. At those points, you're requiring human intervention. These large companies have not done a good job of letting a human kind of choose to go left or right here with the AI. They're not that operation isn't happening, which would promote more scale, at least beyond what we have.
Right. So if you're building agents, focus on high volume pattern-based tasks. Don't try to build an agent that does strategy for the company. Handle your 50 most common questions first. If you're following the hype, we are still in the first inning. The gap between demo and production is wider than people think. So that's good. Everybody take a deep breath. We're not going full AI yet. I don't know, how fast we're going to get to the next inning, but we are still, only 8% have figured this out. Massive first mover advantage still available. So, Chris, kind of why do you think they're not scale? I guess you talked about why they're not.
Well,
scaling.
I mean, so here's how I look at this. When AI first went big, with like just using the ChatGPT prompt, it didn't speak to me. I didn't care very much. Yeah, you can get some interesting responses. It's more involved than search. It's certainly more entertaining than search to use. But it's what's the value here for me? Like really, it's not connecting dots for me and doing meaningful things. But as soon as agentic stuff started becoming possible and embedded AI agents within software, suddenly now the lights are going on. I'm like, I can have it perform these functions. Through that process, I've identified a ton of capture that can happen just by deploying AIs for procedural things. I take this same mindset. I look at companies. I see what happens within these companies. Almost everything is procedural or can be broken down in a way that it looks a lot more procedural than it is now.
Well, one thing I wanted to point out on this, it's not just big companies that they researched. There were companies that are like smaller companies too. So there were obviously billion-dollar companies, but then there was also a lot of companies that were under 100 million, which they consider smaller companies. So it's kind of like across the board, data on this as well. So that's just something to point out.
Sure. I mean, I ran a small phone card and prepaid cell phone company, and I think about the processes we undertook. We had one process that had to involve manual labor, and actually two processes, and the rest of our internal processes could have been performed by AIs deployed. It would have been an interesting deployment, but like this was achievable.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think everybody's facing these same problems, but like, again, first inning, how many small businesses like that are really going to be deftly deploying AIs to do these things? Probably not many. You're going to need some consultancies to step in and like show the way.
Right. Anyway, moving on to segment 2, the 2.8x factor. So what we have here is an MIT study a couple of weeks ago. It showed us kind of bolt-on AI doesn't work, right? And then McKinsey shows us what does, fundamental workflow. Can you please go to the segment 2? Fundamental workflow redesign. So yes, this one. So this is the innovation. This is the innovation paradox. So you can see here that what they're noticing is that most companies report innovation. Like look at it's improved, right? Using AI. But then look at the profitability, revenue growth, and market share. I mean, it's not even close to how innovation grows. It doesn't affect part of profitability. It doesn't, affects a little bit, but not to the speed of how innovation has been improved. So why is the profitability and organic revenue growth and market share is not moving as fast as innovation? What do you think?
Well, these things are not linked. And I think any preconceived notion that people have that they are linked is false and needs to be abandoned. The deal is you have innovation and then you have efficiency that comes on the back of innovation. And then after those things are in place, marketing and sales are supposed to use these advances to increase revenue. To me, those are totally
Wait a
separate
second,
tasks.
hold on. I'll push on that. So why would a company innovate if it doesn't necessarily add to profitability or revenue growth? Like why would they do that?
It creates the possibility to add to it.
How do you sell that to the CFO? Have you ever sold to CFO and like, let's do this
No, I
crazy
don't
thing?
think it speaks well to the language of business. I mentioned the need for speed earlier. They want really clear, like one-to-one, sort of analogies to go from this to profit. And that's
But to
not the
me,
way
like
these things work.
if it's not linked that yet, then like there's obviously some kind of broken thing. Like either we're talking about an innovation, we're just doing all the talk and there's not a lot of walk. It's not
Well,
actually translating into the
here's what
bottom
I
line.
see. I don't see organic revenue growth, just as an example, being a natural outcome of this. I see margin growth as being a direct outcome of this.
Well, profitability so you don't think profitability and
Well,
revenue growth.
organic revenue growth is not profitability. Now, profitability, I do see that, but how many of these companies are creating these massive improvements in efficiency and then furloughing staff and other things and other resources to capture that?
And they're
That's a
still
tough
not
decision.
improving any kind of improvements.
Do
So
what?
like it's not that much improvement compared to what they're claiming innovation to be.
Well, I mean, I'd like to survey these companies. How many of them are absolute hard asses who are cutting everybody and everything that can be cut because of this new efficiency that has been captured?
Well, clearly employee satisfaction is down. I mean, it's not moving as fast as innovation is either. All I'm saying is that I think innovation is a big word that a lot of companies are using, but they have no clear path to translate that to any kind of numbers or anything like that that actually shows what AI really does for them. I mean, at the
Right.
end
I,
of the day.
I think that perfectly mirrors reality.
Well, I mean,
Innovating is one thing, capturing profit is another.
yeah, it's like 64% of the companies say AI improves innovation, but only 39 see any kind of EBIT, impact. And
Yeah.
so it's
Well, they
kind of
should be
like,
innovating in terms of marketing and sales.
well, to me, that's kind of like something is not quite right. So maybe it's too early to kind of tell the difference. Maybe, profit comes later, like once they
That's
improve
the
the
point I want to
efficiency.
make. I think you shoulder upfront costs to capture innovation and new efficiencies.
Mm-hmm.
You do all that stuff to get the system right. But the benefits, profit, whatever, that comes later once the model has been able to operate over time and actually give you efficiency credits, so to speak. Like you have to capture that. Just because you got the potential doesn't mean it's happened. You run it for a while. Now you've got some actual capture. Then you get the benefits, but you don't get them right away.
Right. Well, I mean, to me, like whatever you're doing, it has to show some kind of improvement, either on revenue growth or something to kind of show you what's your ROI. Otherwise, you're just throwing big words and don't really know what that means. So, but
Well,
that's
I mean, there's got to be a lot of that going on, right? People know that, CEOs know that, oh, we have to do some AI initiatives, but how many
well,
of them are really nailing that?
well. Let's go to the next slide on the segment, which actually talks about the people. And so look at kind of high performers set innovation or growth objectives for AI efforts in addition to efficiency goals. So efficiency, look at AI high performers, all other respondents. So they set the goal of efficiency with AI, but then look at other goals that AI high performers set as well. They set efficiency with growth, with innovation. To them, it's kind of all the same thing. And then all other respondents who are not AI high performers, according to McKinsey, they set the goals of efficiency, but look at the growth and innovation being like not close to what AI high performers are setting up. So what does this tell you? What do you think?
AI high performers are actually doing things to capture new results, and all other respondents. So I just think about math graphs, right? You've got linear improvement, a very slow rate of growth over time, maybe
Mhm.
even flat at companies. If you've been around long enough, it's kind of hard to capture anything. And then you might have a more geometric curve for these AI people, able to capture more stuff that was harder to gain before. If you want to capture, you capture on both sides. You reduce operating costs and you increase capacity. Those are happening on different ends of the spectrum. And AI is the promise that you can actually do both.
Mm-hmm.
In the old world, you had to focus on one or the other, and there were limits to what you could do there. But with AI, you can kind of get close to replacing, like I said, every single procedure or process that is predictable within your company. If anyone thinks they're anywhere close to capturing all this, they're crazy.
But the reason I put all of the slides in the segment is because if we go back to the first slide in the segment, where this is where the innovation and profitability and revenue growth, and then you go to the other one with the people. So you can see the people that are AI high performers. They are the ones that will move the needle faster. So if you are if you work at a company where if a company in America is not caring about AI, they all care about AI right now. This is the chance for you to become an AI high performer, and by doing that, like, this is how you become it. You have to focus on all three and not just talk about efficiency without caring about growth and innovation. So that's the biggest difference between the players who are gonna, stay and have a career that continue to grow, and then there's going to be the difference between those who are just like, whatever. Now it's getting multiplied more than ever. Your effect and your ROI on you in the company would be even more apparent. And this is how you get there. You show, how is your efficiency with AI leading to growth and innovation, because for sure the AI non-high performers, they're not doing that.
Well, I think you kind of got this from you, but managers, people like that, and teams, that stuff is, their stock is down and declining.
Yeah.
The stock of AI experts is going up. And the reason why is because they can take over, they can combine the duties of teams and managers by having this relentless focus on processes and automating processes with AI. You're performing multiple functions that were important within a company before through one person and setting up an automated system that can be worked on by others. It is an extremely crucial asset for growth and survival in all these companies. If you are an AI expert, and that's what it means to be an AI expert, you know how to deploy it to replace processes and get more consistent results.
Yeah.
And you kind of have this broader view, like, what else can we capture with this? What else can we replace with this? How can we deploy this to get more out of it?
So high performers are 2.x more likely to redesign the entire workflow around AI, not just add AI to existing processes, aka, oh, we're efficient now. Look, we've got, we're automating something. We're going to bolt it on. They're not those people. They're thinking about how to redesign the whole workflow around AI to get some growth and innovation along the way. So anyway,
I love that, because that's the great refactoring.
Right. There's a note here that you want to talk about page mode approach on this.
Let's see. Well, so the great refactoring is redesigning existing systems to be able to leverage AI to the maximum extent possible. My basic hypothesis in this whole area is that existing systems cannot be tweaked and contorted to do this. Therefore, it is necessary to rebuild from the ground up with these new objectives in mind. You have to abandon everything else that was previously there.
Mm-hmm.
If you cannot hit the reset button, so to speak, and start fresh, you will eventually get beat by someone who did do that. It's inevitable.
Yep.
There's no way around it. That is the promise of the great refactoring. That is why it's the great refactoring. It's like reshuffling of the order of society. And so I do that with PageMotor. That's what I did. I said, well, WordPress, this isn't working anymore for websites. There's other problems that I've been wanting to solve for years. But the real idea is that if I want AI to be able to build my website, to take over the primary and difficult roles that agencies have been performing, that creates massive inefficiencies and bottlenecks in the marketplace. If I want the software to do that, then I must redesign it from the ground up. It must be the fundamental operating layer must be the kind of data that AI likes and wants to use. The information I give it, it needs to be able to speak that language. The output it gives, the software needs to be able to speak that language. It needs to be fluent in all those things. The whole thing has to be rebuilt to do that. So that's the approach and the bet that I am taking. Whenever I notice any other companies kind of doing this, my ears perk up I'm paying attention because these are the workflows of the future. These tools are inevitably going to win. Anything that does this is aligned with the future. Anything that does not is aligned with the past. And it's gotten to the point for me, like I look at, there's been a discussion argument on WordPress X over the last couple of weeks about the Gutenberg block editor. Some people are very critical. Some people are trying to be defenders. And there's been the argument has bubbled up, especially in the last 2 days. There's like this little nasty infighting going on. And I just sit back and I'm thinking, you guys are arguing at the cemetery. Like, what are you doing? Like, start looking what's alive here. This is dead.
Yeah.
We're having the funeral and you guys are arguing. Like,
oh my gosh, who gets the inheritance? So listen, for the people part, the 2.8x thing, I think as somebody who works with people in my business, I see that's the greatest way to protect your career for more growth is to do that, because AI is only a tool and companies will look for people who are looking to get really good with it, embrace it, and build with that. And that's the way, that's kind of how you become one, is if you ask kind of these questions that we outlined here for you. So let's move to segment 3, which is a 62% advantage. That's the next slide. So that's how many companies are stuck in pilots, and only 7% are fully scaled. No.
I know, but we didn't look at that. But I mean, that kind of illustrates the AI high performers are 2.8 times more effective. They're leading the push to fundamentally redesign workflows. They are the architects of the great refactoring. It's not close. Moving on.
Yeah. So in this case, you can see that these are mostly large enterprises with massive budgets and AI teams. MIT showed why big companies struggle with pilots. McKinsey shows why they can't scale even when pilots work. And as a small, if you have a small team or you have a small company or you're building your own company, you have a structural advantage, because look at the 62% are piloting or experimenting, any use of early testing AI. So you can add up this two numbers, piloting and experimenting, and you can see that. So what, when it's a big 10,000 person company, there's legacy systems, dozens of teams, political buy-in. It takes them forever to move, right? If it's a 5-person company, we're just saying, hey team, we're doing this differently. We're using Claude today, whatever, done 20 minutes. And you kind of like playing and experimenting with that. And so that's what kind of caught my attention here, is that how little is still being done in big organizations. And what do you think about this kind of chart?
So just as the great refactoring applies to software, it applies to organizations as well. The organizations must be refactored to support growth along these initiatives. My, contention is that companies are not set up to do this at all. The bureaucracies that exist, the approvals and all these things that it has to go through, and all these levels, this managerial level, that one, C-level, everybody has to sign off on this. That process does not work in the world of AI. It is similar to the regulations being put on, like OpenAI or Claude versus the Chinese models. You need to be thinking to turn yourself into a Chinese model if you're a company, so you can grow along these new vectors. Otherwise, you're just kind of shooting yourself in the foot all the way, and hindering progress for the ramp up. So, the great refactoring touches everybody. It's not just about software. It's about organizations as well. And I think that's a point that we haven't really made before.
And on this chart, you can see that this is a use of AI from 2017. That's how many respondents were using it. And use of Gen AI, that's the light blue one that started in 2023. Look how it jumped, from 2023 to 2025. But it really, I think, helped out to speed up the use of AI in general across other companies.
Yeah,
so,
I see that dark blue line as like oh yeah, we're doing this,
it's
putting on a good face. I see the light blue line, use of Gen AI, is like actual stuff.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, we gotta go with this. So that's an interesting stat right here. And then if you go to the next chart. So over here, this is what I was talking about. This is the companies that they, interviewed, right? So there's companies that are under 100 million, and there's companies that are, 5 billion and more. So you can see the size companies, and you can see how many have scaled, right? And so kind of percentage of, the respondents. So if you look at 5 billion and more, fully scaled, like they're obviously ahead of the curve, right? Because they've got more money, more budgets, whatever. And there's very few of them who are not using it, right? And if you look at the smaller companies, it's kind of like almost the opposite. Do you see that?
Yeah, but what gets me is the experimenting. Like if we could see trend lines, I think you'd be bullish on the stock of the sub $100 million companies and less bullish on the stock of the larger companies
Well,
because of
I
the
mean,
trend lines.
the larger companies for sure are leading the way. I mean, they're like, because again, they have to, because otherwise they may be out of whatever. They'll sneeze and they lose. The smaller companies for sure are like, they're slowly catching up, but at the same time, they also have the hugest, what's the word? Advantage, because they can move faster. So they're experimenting more now, and larger companies, they're sort of more in the mature stage. But what we know about mature stage is that you kind of said, in stone with what you're doing and not experimenting as much. So I think that I would take experimenting right now versus scaling, because there's so much happening. Like even just like this past week, what happened, right? So who's going to be winning? Who's going to be the one who experimenting, or the ones who are scaling and they're already committed to a certain path?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So for the last 20 years, there's been a real fashionable term in business, but especially tech business, called agile. And agile has been an absolute buzzword until now. Now it's real. This is the real age of agile. To perform the great refactoring, you've got to be agile in all areas: personnel, procedures, software, outcomes. And so this is the real age of agile. The buzzword is now real. And whoever has the most agility is going to be able to navigate this landscape the best moving forward. We explored earlier in the show how Cursor has had to do crazy things and will continue to have to do crazy things to try and navigate that landscape. They kind of put the cart in front of the horse.
Mm-hmm.
They're having to play catch up and figure out how to control this thing. Whereas these small companies are going to be able to get it right. And we're going to see some growth. These small companies are going to become larger companies. There's going to be some brilliant stuff coming out of that. The growth that comes out of that, we're going to see some really, really strong companies leading the way. And it's just a matter of years. I say 2-3 years. We're going to see someone who's unknown now. It's going to be very big.
Oh, they're popping up that crazy. And I just wanted you guys to see this. Like with all this hype and all this money and all this thing that's flowing, we only have like, 10% of the companies that are like fully scaled it at 5 billion and more. That's crazy, right? So like we're still early on in the wild, wild west. It's just begun. And so just enjoy the ride. I'm glad you're here learning the best practices. So hopefully that'll save you some time on not making the mistakes that they have made, right? And not make the mistakes on the pricing or the cost or what to use, what not to use. I mean, there's so much learning that they've done on their dollar, literally, that they had to burn. So anything else you have to say on this segment? Anything that really surprised you before we move on?
No, I don't think there's any surprises, except for the fact that the great refactoring applies to organizations and personnel just as much as it does to like software and systems.
And now we know, we have the insight into what personnel looks like to successfully keep scaling AI at the companies and have the ROI that the companies want. So at the end of the day, it's going to be really about people, because you can have the best systems, the best everything, but it's the people that really going to kind of dictate the success of
the AI ninjas.
Yeah, AI ninjas. Oh, I like that. All right. Flash news. Moving on. We're gonna do a very quick flash news that I did not want to do the whole segment on, but I think you guys need to know. So OpenAI GPT 5.1, November 12th, launched. It outpaces GPT-5 with adapting reasoning 2 to 3 times faster on simple tasks, 71% on deeper on complex, plus instant and thinking variants. So, I guess GPT-5 got better. GPT 5.1 got better.
They launched some
Um,
developer tools, which might be interesting. So they have one called Apply Patch, which does code diffs. So you could say, here's version 1 of my software, here's version 2. Tell me exactly what's different. It's real quick and good at that, which is, it's useful, certainly. It's as you scale into teams, that's really useful. Shell, which is local command execution, sort of mimics using a terminal on a local machine. And then there's also no reasoning mode. I called back to, or I mentioned this in previous shows, but these companies are getting a better handle on when to deploy certain types of GPU resources to solve certain problems. A lot of problems don't really require any reasoning at all. If you've provided enough context and the model already knows what it knows, then it can just use this and generate output without really any extra reasoning. If it's purely procedural, that this applies.
Yeah.
This is the case for many things, so that the no reasoning mode is 20% faster on tool calls. This affects embedded AI. This would affect something like page motor. I like seeing the increases along those lines because it should, I want to see the compute getting cheaper for these types of tasks because I've been able to identify underneath the surface that it is pretty simple. It should be fast. It should be cheap. And I want to see that, I want to see that trend line continue.
And 90% cheaper 24-hour prompt catching.
Yeah, it's huge. Prompt caching is also big. I have to worry about
that. Check it out. Let me know what you think. I've noticed this week, I don't know why, it's just my eyes, but all of my eyes have been kind of misbehaving and lying.
Other people have said this. Others have been saying this.
Yeah, I just caught all of them. Gemini, Claude, ChatGPT. It's just like they're just either became not as smart or they're just lying more. So I had to catch a lot of different things that got away. So I'm not sure what happened this week.
Are they playing with us? Are we getting messed with?
I don't know. Testing our intelligence, maybe. Anthropic has unveiled a $50 billion plan to build a dedicated U.S. AI infrastructure, including custom data centers in Texas and New York. Construction starts in 2026. So they are they're bolstering American AI sovereignty and then intensifying competition over data centers, electricity, and land. Where who can plug in first now rivals model quality. So
I wonder what's going on there. I wonder if they're going to run some open source models and try some new things.
I don't know, but that's the news. 50 million, 50 billion. Not as crazy as OpenAI, but they're making their plans and expanding. Also, this week, SoftBank sold its entire 5.8 billion NVIDIA stake to fund massive AI bets, including up to 30 billion more in OpenAI. They are going all in on OpenAI. And $1 trillion US AI manufacturing hub. And that sparked 4% NVIDIA drop. But I cracked a joke that SoftBank, they made some interesting bets. Obviously, we work. FTX, right? So they have an interesting, I don't know.
They've got that opposite of the Midas touch, the Jim Cramer effect. I don't know.
What's the opposite of the Midas touch?
I guess everything you touch turns to shit.
I don't know, but this is the kind of third time. Hopefully, it's not a charm, but that's what they did. They abandoned their stake in NVIDIA, which is interesting to me. But then also NVIDIA hit 5 trillion cap, whatever that's called, and maybe they're just cashing out early. Maybe they know something we don't. And last but not least, a news of the week is Perplexity. Actually, they launched it last week. We didn't talk about it, but I think for startups and those that are innovating, that could be fun. A little tidbit of knowledge. Perplexity launched Perplexity Patents. It's an AI-powered search tool that lets builders scan over 100 million global filings in plain English, and it's free during beta and uncapped with a $20 a month pro plan. So every test show patent checks that once cost you a couple $100, took hours to run, but now it's just minutes. So this is it's a great summary to kind of give you some feedback on what's been patented, what's not. And I can't believe U.S. Patent Office haven't really had that service, but I'm also not surprised because it's government.
Yeah.
But I love that there's a service out there for inventors, because patents is if you have to deal with them, you know how expensive they are. So Perplexity now has this interesting service.
I dealt with this many years ago, 2013, 14, 15. And I was so frustrated because patent stuff, trademark stuff. It's navigating paperwork.
Oh
It's
my God,
navigating
it's
paperwork. And I
so
felt like I'm
boring.
paying a gatekeeper
Yeah.
fee to law firms, and I have to sign a retainer to do it, and it's going to take however long it takes, and it's a thing. And I just felt like I'm like roped in like cattle and having to play a part of the system when really we're just navigating this thing. They could have told me the tools I need to go use. I would have happily done it just to save myself the trouble and the dealing with that relationship. So I love to see stuff like this. AI should be deployed everywhere paperwork is ever being navigated, now and forever. Amen.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't, like, obviously if it's important, you obviously talk to the attorney, but you can do a quick little search. Sometimes it's enough to be like, oh wow, okay, I'm not gonna go there. All right, next segment of the day is the new bottleneck. Why did Microsoft just bet $10 billion on power and not chips? So remember how last week we talked about that what's his name, Natella?
Satya Nadella.
Yeah, Nadella. I should know his name. That he talked about that it's not really the chips that's the problem. They have a ton of them. It's really the power. Well, this week they just dropped almost $10 billion on electricity. So they bought access to a former Bitcoin mining operation in Texas that controls 750 megawatts of power. I don't know how much that is, but it sounds like a lot.
Sounds like a lot.
All right. So we've been obsessed about GPU scarcity for 2 years, but what if we've been solving the wrong problem? The real constraint isn't compute, is it the grid? So Microsoft signs with IREN, a crypto miner turned AI landlord. I like how crypto people now moved on
Yeah, I know, right?
to the AI landlords.
We've
So-
sold our NFTs for pennies, and
So
we're
they're
moving on.
not mining Bitcoin anymore. They own grid-connected power sites, and they're leasing that capacity to run AI workloads. I love the adjustment on that. That's awesome. So Bitcoin miners control about 14 gigawatts of power globally, already connected, already cooled. Converting a mine to AI data center, 9 months. Building one from scratch, 5 to 7 years. So Microsoft just skipped the line and got in bed with IREN. So there you go. What do you think about that?
Well, I saw this come up earlier in the week. I don't remember who posted it. It was something adjacent to All In, or maybe Greg Eisenberg or something like that. Somebody mentioned that we could generate all this power, but we don't have the grid capacity to handle it. So even if we wanted to, suddenly scale out a bunch of nuclear power plants or something like this, or build some crazy solar farms, we couldn't do it. And unfortunately, the building of the grid part is a real, like, we got a time factor there that sucks.
Right.
So I'm not really sure. I'm not familiar with like exactly the thing. You might be able to build a data center in X amount of time, but the grid takes Y amount of time, and that's much greater than X. So not great.
And McKinsey is saying, AI could drive 30x increase in data center power demand by 2035. 30x? That's crazy.
Feels like a lot, but I can see some applications.
Right. So if cloud costs spike 20 to 50% because of electricity shortages, and who will get priced out? Is efficiency about to stop being a nice to have and become the only way to stay in the game for all these AI companies?
Well, it's a land grab.
Well, I mean, I love watching all these moves that are like, wait, what? They just bought, a crypto, whatever, the Bitcoin miner. Like, what's that for? So anyway, very
I love
interesting.
that pivot. I wonder what that means for Bitcoin, though. It's weird.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I wonder too. Last but not least, the segment of the day is going to be my funding in AI. Let me pull that up if I can find it.
It's a big week.
It is a big week.
4.884 billion.
Yeah. Oh, so do you see this one? My pretty little.
Love it. Look at
My
this.
pretty little thing. So I want to show you guys. I'm using Claude for this. I created a skill, and I've talked about this a couple of weeks ago of kind of my practical AI application here. So now my skill runs, kind of goes through all the companies that raised money for the week, and it looks for AI companies, and then it puts them out in the report. And I actually found a mistake yesterday with Claude because it was also pulling retail companies because it had AI in it, and then adjusted its skill. So now it only looks for the word AI itself and not the things containing AI. So that I thought that was fascinating that I was able to see that. But here's the report.
Well, hold on, before we go into it, just do a scroll for me on the page so the audience can see this. Okay, Claude generated an HTML document. That's what this is. Conceivably, you could generate pages like this, stick them onto a static website, and build out your site this way with these pages that are really nicely done.
Yep.
So I'm curious, any of you watching, especially any page motor enthusiasts, if you can think of a good application for this, or if this might be a way you would like to actually build out sites. I've been chewing on this for about 4 days now, and it sure has my attention because we covered weeks ago about how static websites, for many applications, it's just, it's better than setting up a WordPress and dealing with all the complication. Like, I can see definite applications for static websites, but now generating this type of page, like Olga's putting out really interesting data every week, it would be a pain in the butt to make HTML files and to do all the formatting and stuff, or even to like create this within a content editor, something that you might find in PageMotor or WordPress. That would be, a non-starter. But here, this is already done and beautiful, and she could just stick this on the website. That might be interesting. So just something for you to think about if you build web pages or websites or things like that.
And you guys asked for better visuals, so here they are, okay? And I don't know why, but Claude thinks purple is a color of AI for some reason. Anyway, 4.9 billion of total AI funding this week, 49% of all venture capital went to AI. God, I had a brain freeze for a second. 68 companies got funded, and there were 15 mega rounds. Man. So again, half of the VC money, I mean, the total was like $9 billion for the week. Half of it went to AI.
I think this is the biggest or second biggest week since we started covering this.
Crazy. So look at the regional breakdown, right? And I know you like how it kind of shows up like this.
Oh, love the highlighting table behavior.
So United States got 36 companies with just under 4 billion. China got 28 million. They're very efficient with their stuff. Europe is 162. So US is again leading with 80% of AI funding stays home. So the 5 companies that got funded, Anosphere got $2.3 billion. I mean, what? Like, that's like, it's a lot of money. It's Applied Research Lab focused on automating coding through innovative AI solutions. Massive Series D round positions them as a leader in AI-powered developer tools. I want to do a deep dive on them, on how is their cost structured and how they're making money. That's a lot of money that they raised.
I haven't really looked into them either. That is, it's fascinating.
Yeah, Clio, 500 million. It's a cloud-based legal practice management software helping law firms manage cases, billing, client relationships with AI-powered features.
I'm super bullish on anything like this that is being built to crush these big verticals where there's clearly procedural stuff that could be captured.
They are definitely moving in there for sure. D-Matrix, 275 million, platform enabling data centers to handle large-scale generative AI interference with high throughput and low latency, critical infrastructure for AI boom. So I guess this is more of an infrastructure.
Yeah, that's highways.
All right. GenSpark is an AI search platform that utilizes generative AI to create custom summaries and detailed overviews in response to user queries. Okay, what? 200 million?
I like, that seems like a big bet against existing players like Google and everybody else. Like, I don't know how much I feel confident about that.
I literally, if you have any idea these days and you want to raise money, it looks like everybody.
You just have to be in the valley. You have to be in the valley and say that you're going to solve somebody else's startup problem.
Yeah.
And then they all love you forever.
I scratch my head. Wonderful. I like how Europe has Lovable, Wonderful. I mean, they've got the cutest ideas ever. Amsterdam, Enterprise AI platform enables organizations to create, test, and deploy AI agents for voice, chat, and email interactions. I wonder who their clients are.
Call
centers. Yep. And then the trends, mega rounds dominate. Average mega round size was 276 million.
Jeez.
US dominance is still there. 36 of 68 funded AI companies are US based, but they got 80% of the funding. Trend number 3, infrastructure and developer tools lead. So it continues to stay this way. Later stage capital flows. So we have Series D, Series B, and A combined is 1.3 billion. Seed rounds were kind of very small comparatively. And trend 5, emerging investment themes, AI compliance, efficient edge AI solutions, legal tech, enterprise SaaS. So that's it. This is our funding. I'm going to do it this way from now on because it only takes me a couple minutes to get this done. I love how I totally automated it. I just need to do basic checks and making sure the numbers line up. But other than that, I love my Claude.
Better results faster.
It's the best.
There might be something to this AI thing.
Yeah, I'm thinking too. Anyway, a big takeaway from today's show, and let's wrap this up.
Well, can't ignore the Chinese AI thing. The underlying reason behind all this momentum shift, in my view, is the regulatory burdens put on the US and EU-based models that do not exist for the Chinese models. And then you have this competing interest of, needing to manage costs. We're good at having these companies that experience explosive growth and capture a ton of users really fast. But then they have to figure out the economic problem. And the pressures of the economic problem are forcing them to choose these Chinese models. So even though we've tried to cut out the Chinese model saying you can't have GPUs and all this other stuff, hilariously, the market forces are pushing everybody to work together, even if that was not the intent to begin with. And so I would like to see competition from these US models and EU-based models. But in order to do that, they're going to have to release these regulatory burdens, and we're going to have to kind of have a mindset shift that affects this whole thing. That's not what we've been doing. We've been moving in direction of greater security, greater control, greater restraining of outputs in the name of this or that or whatever sensibilities we have. And a race like this reveals the problems with that.
Yep.
It's not a problem until these problems are revealed, right? But this is slowly revealing hey, there might be a problem with this approach. Or we could just say, screw it, we're actually fine with dumping all this compute through Chinese resources. So I think that is a fascinating twist in the arms race that has developed. I love seeing companies like Cursor try to navigate this because there's big lessons. I think the lesson of don't try to do a token-based cost system right now. You don't have the resources to absorb the losses it's going to take to get there to figure it out, number one. Number two, you're going to have to be dealing with fluctuating costs, which is a chaotic scene. You have to have the technical infrastructure to manage that chaotic scene. And then you have to deal with the customer relations side of things where, if you're constantly manipulating your prices, people don't like that.
Yep.
So this is not a game for you to play right now, in my view. Now I see people out there doing it, FAFO. Do your thing, but I would watch that scene with caution and just continue to build your stuff, but don't get too in bed with any smaller models that are attempting to play this pricing game. It's not going to end well.
Yeah, for sure. So I would love if you all start sharing with us more. I know we sent an email after this to kind of sum up the show, but I'd love for you to start sharing with us how you use Practical AI. I know looking at the McKinsey report, Chris tells me this all the time, we are in this, we talk about this a lot. We think it's happening everywhere, and it is happening everywhere. But for most people, it's still sort of somewhere out there. For us, it's happening, it's here, it's now, but it's leading edge to majority of people out there who are just getting, look at the Gen I, only 2 years around. We are on the leading edge. We're walking the walk. There's a lot of changes every week. And, keeping up with all of this has been a lot of fun. And at the same time, really overwhelming because you just blink and Cursor goes from this model to this model. And who knows what's going to happen next? And that's why I love AI world so much right now. So if you're not on the email list, go to pagemotor.com/ what is it?
I just put it on the chat.
Pagemotor.com/email list.
Email dash list, yeah.
And then you can get all of the kind of summaries, because we send the summary out for those of you who don't want to listen to the whole show. And then you can still keep up with all this.
Oh, we send out a reader optimized transcript every week for the show. And it's really nice because you can get the key takeaways. You kind of get it all in bullet point format. It's much faster than actually watching the show, except
I use Claude Skill for that.
You miss my beautiful face if you do that, but it might be worth it.
I use Claude Skills for that too. I love Claude Skills. It's awesome. And if you're using that, share. I love sharing, and we can highlight the stories. And then also, if there's any guests you'd like for us to have, I'm going to start inviting guests. So we can do maybe like 30, 40 minutes news, and then we're going to actually dive deep into the guests. So give us some ideas on who you want to see here. But I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're in the know. You know a lot more than majority of people out there right now. So thanks for joining us. And I guess we will see you next Friday.
Yep. Remember, if you're here, you're going to make it. We'll see you next week, gang.
All right. We'll see you later. Bye.